With the latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Coming up, we will have half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's show, China's consumer spending gained momentum during the holiday season and factory activity continued its expansion. So how does China's economy look like at the start of the year? And global trade is at risk. How will Trump's new tariff policy threaten the global economy? And now let's begin with our top story. China has recorded 500 million domestic tourist trips during the 8-day Spring Festival holiday, up 5.9%. Tourists spent over 677 billion yuan, or about $94 billion on their holiday trips. And China's Spring Festival film season has also set new records. Meanwhile, China's factory activity continues its expansion in January. China's Caixin manufacturing PMI registered 50.1 last month. So for more on this and China's economy, join us on the line now are Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Archi Technologies, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. So, Jiahe, I will start with you. During China's Spring Festival period, we see a lot of traveling, shopping, and gift giving. So, what stood out during this year's Spring Festival spending, and what does the trend tell us about China's consumption going forward?
Well, I have been spending the Spring Festival holiday in Haikou City, which is, and you can just feel the crowd of the consumption by going to the shopping malls. I mean, just to feel the crowd there. You see so many people surrounding the shops, selling electrical stuff, selling new energy vehicles, all sorts of things. And one of the most amazing things is that if you go to watch a film, the cinemas are just full filled with crowds. I mean, this is probably the most amazing data during this Spring Festival holiday is that China's box office revenue broke its own record, reached a new height, and broke the threshold of 10 billion yuan during the Spring Festival. And this is actually what I felt in the cinemas. It's so long the queues that you got there with buying the snacks and drinks, all sorts of things. So actually you can see that the consumption has been increasing pretty strongly in this Spring Festival holiday. And that's basically as a consequence of both the robust growth of the Chinese economy, as well as the policies that has been given out by China's government aimed at stimulating the consumption. For example, the government gave out a lot of coupons. They set a lot of subsidies for what we call the old for new programs. That means that you can just sell your old mobile phone, get a subsidy from government yearly at about 20 or 30% of the cost of the new phone, and you can replace your old phone for a new phone. And also the reduced the mortgage rates. People who bear mortgage for their houses now currently they pay a bit less money every month and they got more money to spend. So with all these policies as well as the robust growth of China's economy, we have seen this strong consumption growth during the festival. And I think in the next few months, this trend ought to be continued.
And so, Dr. Zhou Mi, how do you feel about China's consumption during the holiday, and how are the current policies helping to unlock the consumer potential?
Well, for me, I also traveled to the south part of China and I went to, I think there are several provinces. And one of the most impressing is that when I went to Yunnan, I felt that the road is so crowded, so many cars on the road. So I think that the people are really trying to see the different sceneries for spring festivals. And also, I found that there are another choices for many people to go to the north of China, to go to Harbin, and also to trying to experience the ice and the snow, the very impressive activities over there. So personally, I believe that the Spring Festival is one of the most important days for Chinese people, and it is the days that a lot of manufacturers are supplying their products to the people. Well, as Jiahe mentioned, that the movies is another choices. I hope that people have a good start in the in this year, and they may have more choices. And the government is also trying to address their demands and trying to provide them with better and more diversified choices.
And yeah, so for manufacturing, we saw China's factory activity continue expanding in January, and the Caixin manufacturing PMI registered 50.1 last month. And also during the Spring Festival period, two Chinese companies caught much attention. DeepSeek is one of them, and another is the robotics company Unitree, which got massive exposure at the Chinese Spring Festival Gala. So how much can these high-tech companies contribute to China's economic development, do you think?
Well, I think this high-tech industries is very important in not only upgrading the Chinese industries overall, but they're also really help with technological innovations and foster the new quality productive forces and the emerging industries. So I think in that sense, it's very important. So you mentioned, the manufacturing PMI, this is 50.1, so that is in the expansionary zone. And let's not forget, January, because of the Spring Festivals, many factories close down earlier, workers go back to their hometown to enjoy the holidays. And so that means this month, the PMI is usually at a lower reading. So the 50.1 is a pretty good number, and it shows the sentiment and the confidence in the manufacturing sector. It's actually holding up pretty strong despite the uncertainty of the external environment. But I also agree with the others have talked about this consumer sentiment has been pretty strong. We're seeing the domestic tourism trips has gone up by 5.9% year on year, but the spending has gone up by 7%. So that just showcased that the consumer sentiment is pretty solid. And so that strong consumer sentiment will help to boost, I think, further expansion of manufacturing. And again, this is important not only because manufacturing production is important, but this is also the sector that would help to drive technological innovations and foster these new industries.
So Jiahe, so DeepSeek and Unitree, so how much can these high-tech companies contribute to China's economic development, do you think?
Well, when we look at technology, represented by these companies, they actually offer quite strong potential for China's economic growth in the future. Because currently, if you look at China's economic composition, we're standing at a threshold about 13,000 USD per capita. This is a level where we still have a large potential to grow. If you look at the developed economies around the world, they're standing at about 40 to 60,000 USD per capita, and China is only 13, so we've got a large room to grow. But you have to ask the question about where you are going to grow, because you can't keep on relying on the low labor cost. Because if you look at other countries, India and Vietnam, they're standing at just a few thousand USD per capita, much lower than 5,000 USD per capita. So that means you can't compete them with labor cost. So China has to rely on technology, and technology is a key for the growth of Chinese economy in the future. And companies like DeepSeek and these kind of companies, they offer the best technologies that you can ever find in the world. If you compare DeepSeek with OpenAI, these kind of technologies, they're using very similar patterns. So these kind of things offer China probably the best opportunity in the world and equip China's industries and factories with the best technologies that is available in the world today. And this is key to China's growth in the future.
And Yan, so how do you think can DeepSeek or other AI innovation enhance productivity across various industries?
Well, I think this is a great question. I think we're still in the very early stage when it comes to the AI applications. So I think so far, a lot of the efforts are going into building foundational models, such as the ChatGPT and now DeepSeek. But I think the next step, the easy way to integrate, of course, is all these chatbots that could be integrated in the various of apps. But going forward, I think there's great potential for AI to be integrated in, for example, high-end manufacturing, advanced manufacturing sector, and also in the service industries. As you just mentioned, the industrial robotics, Unitree's robots, combined with the AI, they're able to really enhance the functionalities of all these robots in performing not just industrial production, but all kinds of services work. So I think the potential is really vast, and we're only at the very beginning of it. And I think, in terms of the Chinese companies, it shows that not only they're very good in making these foundational models, but we also know that China has a very large market, very desirable sort of the consumer environment. So I think for Chinese companies, it would be much easier for them to monetize and commercialize the AI technologies, which means they're going to find many different ways to apply the AI technologies in manufacturing sector, service sector, and so on and so forth. And so I think that would really help to boost productivity going forward.
So, Jiahe, so for the job market, some say that AI will take jobs from human workers. However, others say the growth of high-tech companies often leads to the creation of high-skilled jobs. So, what do you think?
Well, this is a question that is pretty hard to understand if you look at the short-term stuff, because as you just mentioned, high-tech did take jobs away from some people and give some jobs to people with more skills, all sorts of things. So it's difficult for you to evaluate in the short term, for example, 6 months or 1 or 2 years, that how much high-tech will do to our jobs. But it's pretty easy to comprehend this question if you look at the long term. I mean, if you look at like 100 or 200 years, then you find out that with all the technologies that we have been adding into the society, what we have got is that we're working less and less hours every week. We can have 2 days off, and every day we can work for only like 8 hours, and which is unthinkable back 150 years ago. And we are doing jobs much easier than before. I mean, previously we had to feed the horse, and now you just charge your EV, and that's fine. I mean, it takes like 60 seconds or 30 seconds to put the plug into your EV. That's all. But think about feeding your own horse. That's really difficult job. So if you look at what technology has been doing to human society, is that in the long term, it just makes our lives easier and easier, and we have much higher GDP than before. So it doesn't take job away if you look at the society in the long term. But if you talk about short term, yeah, they do take some jobs away from the labor market and give some jobs back, and they require labor with more skills.
So what do you think about the relations between the advancement of the AI and jobs?
Well, I think it is true that technologies hold the potential of replacing some of the human jobs. But I think, this is not necessarily a bad thing. It really depends on two things. One is what kinds of jobs that AI technologies may replace. And we don't want some of those very tedious, repetitive, and manual kind of work. And so industrial robots equipped with artificial intelligence would be great to replace those jobs. So the second question becomes then, when we have these sort of surplus labor, where do we put them? So I think, of course, the AI technologies, just like any technologies in the past, will open opportunities and new kinds of jobs. So I think what we need to do then is to train the workers, provide sufficient, education and human capital, so then they can move from some of these low-skill, repetitive, routine-based jobs into the more sort of brain jobs, and typically more skilled, more income. So I think AI is an opportunity, but it does present certain challenges. So we have to retool the workforce and really create the new types of jobs to accommodate for the needs.
And Dr. Zhou Mi, so some have talked about the policy support in the high-end manufacturing sector, but we also need to look at investment returns. And when companies invest in upgrading the factory facilities, they have to, consider returns. And that includes considering the external environment and uncertainties such as the 10% extra tariffs that Donald Trump put on the Chinese exports. So how much potential is there for China's high-end transformation of its manufacturing industry?
Well, in my understanding, the manufacturing depends on two things. The first is the technology, whether we do have enough technology to support the innovation and trying to create a better performance for the services and also the products. And the second is the market. If we do have this technology, can we find enough markets that can accept this technology or products and trying to pay for that? So based on these two kind of things, we need to have a better environment to create a better room for for the companies who are able to innovate and trying to benefit from the advancement or improvement of this technology. I think for China, China is a very large market. We have a super large demand on the different things. And one of the very important characteristics is that Chinese people are really want to enjoy the innovation. So in this regard, I would believe that the development of China's domestic market is one of the pillars that we can support the development, like the companies that you have mentioned, the DeepSeek, that they have been widely used and discussed in several sectors, like the education, like some of the even for the business plannings. I see that there are so many possibilities for the high technology companies to expand their market here. Well, on the other hand, I have to see that Chinese market is trying to be connected by the government's interactions with other countries. So we are creating a better room and better market for the development of these companies. I think that is also helpful for us not to just look at only our single market of the United States, but we do have many large potentials for the companies to develop and their products, no matter manufacturing or in the services package. I do believe that they do have a lot of potentials.
Well, we're speaking with Dr. Zhou Mi with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Archi Technologies, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. And after a short break, we'll take a look at global trade risk and how Trump's new tariff policy could threaten the global economy. Stay with us.
Welcome. I'm Elaf Elad, economics professor and member of the Data Science and AI Center at New York University, Shanghai. On the World Today program, you can find in-depth and impartial insight, as well as critical commentary on key trends in the Chinese economy, financial technology, business, and blockchain. To prepare for the world tomorrow, join me on World Today.
You are listening to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. China has announced plans to impose tariffs on some U.S. products in a slew of measures to counter U.S. tariffs. The move is a response to the 10% additional tariff imposed by the U.S. on Chinese products. China's Commerce Ministry says the nation has filed a lawsuit against the U.S. tariffs at the WTO. Meanwhile, the EU leaders are also vowing to oppose possible tariffs from the United States. That's after President Trump also vowed to impose new levies on Europe. So, Dr. Zhou Mi, U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered some tariffs on the goods from China. So how do you view this move, and what's your analysis of the consequences?
Yeah, Donald Trump is trying to use that as, a bargain power to Chinese government, and they want Chinese government to trying to do something else for, the domestic targets of United States. But I don't think that is a kind of very effective ways, because if you are looking at the legal background, they are trying to use some of the unilateral measures instead of just the promises in WTO. It seems that U.S. has just neglected the existence of WTO anymore. So they are trying to do some things just by their own enforcement or the domestic law. I don't think it's quite a good phenomena if we are looking at history of the international communities for the international trade, because when we are making these commitments, it's based on so many rounds of negotiations, and every countries and every partners want to make some commitments to ensure that the business is environment is stable and predictable. If just using its domestic rules, it seems that they will violate their commitment, and other countries and states may also try to follow the suit. So for the international trade, it should be based on the predictability and also the stability. I don't think that is a good phenomena for the global supply chains. Even if the Donald Trump want to realize his promises to make the United States like a great again or something other purpose, I don't think that is a good phenomena and background for that.
And yeah, so economists say this could slow the U.S. economic growth and push up the U.S. domestic inflation. What's your take?
Well, we know that this is typically the case with tariff, right? Because what it does is it adds a regressive tax on the goods across the border. So for one is that mostly importers are going to pay for that, and eventually the cost will be passed on to consumers. And that's why you would likely to see inflation going up. And especially this time around, the tariff will impose on about $450 billion of the Chinese exports to the United States, including many of the consumer goods like consumer electronics and computer equipment. And so that means that the consumers will very likely and very quickly see the tangible increase in some of these daily sort of necessary products that they consume. And when it comes to industrial goods, the U.S. also rely a lot on the intermediate goods imported from China. So with the added cost of 10%, that means for manufacturing producers, they're likely to see their costs going up, and they may have to either, again, pass the cost on to the consumers, or they will have to find other suppliers. So all of this will disrupt the global supply chain, and therefore it will, in a way, damage the U.S. economies as well. So I think now, on top of that, China has, issued retaliatory tariffs as well. So that is, some 15% on the coal and liquefied natural gas from the United States, and then 10% on, things like crude oil, and then manufacturing equipment, and also the large engine cars, as well as pickup trucks. So all of this will really hit, I would say, Trump's pain points, because he really cares about the energy production. He really cares about the U.S.'s industrial prowess in producing, large equipment and cars. So I think this would also hurt the U.S.'s manufacturers and also their energy producers. So in that sense, it would also affect the U.S.'s growth prospect.
And Dr. Zhou Mi, so how do you see the uncertainty around the U.S. tariff policy overall affecting investors' behavior and risk the premiums in the financial markets?
Well, the investors are really looking at stabilities of the market. If they believe that the market will be more fragile, maybe they will not make right decisions and based on the long term of development of the markets. Because China and the United States, we are the most important bilateral relations in the world. So what we are doing is really important to decide mainly the trend of this development. Like you can find, as you just discussed, the deep shake, that is impactful for also the price of the Nvidia. So I believe that the stock markets are also intertwined with each other by China and the United States. So the investors are really hearing and looking what the two sides want to do and what they are expecting as for the for the decision. For the reason for making a decision for the coming days. So the international financial markets are really impactful for the real economy and also the flow of the resources like the capital, technology, and also other things in the two sides. Also in the international communities.
And Jiahe, what do you see from the financial markets?
Well, currently looking from the financial markets, China's investors are actually a bit bored of these tariffs. When I'm working in the financial market, I talk to investors, and it's not really many people are talking about this anymore because that has been going on for too long. And if you look at that, Trump started adding this tariff to China years ago, and China's economy keeps on growing. We still got like 5% growth last year. You have too much things to look at the moment, because if you look at China's export to the world, so that means 85% of China's export is not going to the United States. If you look at the data in recent years, we have so much more rapid growth for the trade between China and the regions like ASEAN countries, Africa, Europe, all these regions. So United States is actually becoming a smaller and a smaller trading partner with China, accounting now for only 15% of China's trading partners. So its impact is actually reducing.
And Yan, so what will be caused, do you think, by the trade uncertainties, and how should the emerging and developing economies adapt and react themselves from the potential trade shocks?
Well, this is a great question. I think, for big countries like China, as Jiahe just talked about, China has really diversified its economy, its trade structure, upgrading, the trade, the product that China exports, and gain a lot of competitiveness in exporting high-tech and advanced manufactured goods. And also, as Jacques mentioned, diversification of export destinations. So I think, in a way, China's economy really proves itself. And I think for other major economies like EU, like larger emerging markets, Brazil, Turkey, for that matter, they have a much stronger position to trade with other like-minded countries and to be able to form more reliable trading relations. But for smaller countries or countries that really heavily rely on the U.S. economy, like Mexico, 78% of their exports go into the United States. They are in a much weaker position when it comes to leveraging. And also these tariffs can do a lot more damages to them. So I think for many countries, they need to think about alternatives. They need to think about how to find reliable trading partners and how to establish a more stable trading relationships, but also diversify the economies and relying more on their domestic economies and so on and so forth. So I think this would be a wake-up call for many of the countries, and that in a way also would make the U.S. strategy backfire, because essentially what the U.S. has done is undermining its own credibility in sort of as a trading partner or as a partner and allies in general. And that is also not going to be conducive for the U.S. economy, because we know the U.S. does rely a lot on importing manufacturing products. Its goods deficit last year was over $1 trillion. So I think in a way, this is going to be the long-term, I think, problem for the United States, even if they're able to get some leverage in the short term, like in the case of Mexico, Canada, and Panama or Colombia, for that matter. But I think, again, countries will pivot. They will find new ways to trade with each other and build the kinds of multilateral trading system. But the United States is not going to be part of that.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Archi Technologies, and also Dr. Zhou Mi with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening.